Hello, everyone. This is the training we missed I think it was last week. But I appreciate Morgan coming online today and helping us with Microsoft Planner. It's going to be the mechanism we use for our strategic plan. So essentially, the Microsoft Planner will be used as to indicate the action steps related to our strategic plan. So, Morgan, I'll let you go forward.
Perfect. All right, well, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And so we've got recording enabled for this, so that's perfect. So today we're going to be talking about leveraging Planner for effective execution of annual strategic plans. And really, this is just optimizing project tracking and alignment for really that organizational success. So knowing there's a lot of activities that occur to support these big strategic initiatives and just making sure that we're able to keep a finger on the pulse of how each one is executing so that way it can close out and move to the next one. Now, for this, I'll do kind of a short presentation, and then about half the time on the presentation, then we'll jump into the actual tool itself, and I'll show you kind of how to add tasks based on some of the methodology highlights I'll give you today. And then I want to reserve some time towards the end for kind of questions or comments, concerns, anything like that. As we go through today, if you've got a Scratchpad or a notepad, I'll give you a framework of how to build your goals out. And so if during that question time, you want to kind of pop out, want to be like, hey, I'm trying to make this goal for this. Is this the right way? We can definitely do that. So first thing we'll cover today is really just understanding the annual strategic plan framework as it applies, building goals and tasks with SMART methodology, setting up and organizing plans in Microsoft Planner, and then finally visualizing those linkages from the objective all the way to the task-based execution. All right, so first, we'll talk about just understanding in general the annual strategic plan framework. So really, when we think about strategic planning, really our purpose and structure of our strategic plan is to set our vision and direction. So it's clearly defining the vision and setting the direction for the upcoming year. The way a lot of times I like to explain this to people is kind of like you're planning a trip. And as I mentioned, I'm a family man, so planning a trip has gotten significantly more involved for us over the years. Used to, when I was single or it was just me and my wife, we decided on a Friday night that we wanted to go to whatever city, and then on Saturday we just went. It wasn't that complicated. But whenever we're dealing with a larger, more complex organism of the family, there's a whole lot more logistics that need to be executed. So who's going to watch the dogs? What baby stuff do we have to have packed? What medicines do we have to have packed? Is this a place that has a doctor on site, or do we need to bring the nebulizer or whatever those things are? And so having that list of tasks ahead of time that lead us to this successful outcome. And so really, the way I generally will think of strategic plans is that's our guiding framework that helps guide our decision making and resource allocation effectively. And that's where Planner really becomes superpowered in that it lets you align the tasks you're doing and keep surfacing that goal right in front of you consistently. So you always make sure you're working towards that goal. All right, so how do we want to break this down? Now, I'll give you all a little bit of a trap here. I try to give real life tripping points throughout the presentation as I can. One of the risks you can get into this project management methodology is just because you can create 5, 10, 15 layers of task assignments doesn't mean that we necessarily should. And so my typical recommendation for people is break it into 3 to start. If, as you get used to using it, there's a reason to separate it into another level, absolutely go to that. What you don't want to do is wind up separating it into too many levels right off the bat, and then kind of signing up for that throughout the period. And so I'll always start with what's enough to get us through that 80%, and then iterate on that as you discover where you maybe need some more detail, or something along those lines. And so your top level is going to be your strategic objective. And I'll show you how to tie those to goals in Planner and say, okay, what ultimately are we trying to do there? And then under that goal, you're going to have your department goals. So how do I, as a department, support this strategic objective or this organizational goal? And when we define those goals, we want to define them in a way that highlights the focus efforts and specific functional areas that are used to support that goal. And so, not every goal. So if we have a goal for student experience, for example, and say I'm the finance organization, then the general ledger accounting function may not have a whole lot to do, right? With enhancing the student success and experience. But the accounts payable or potentially the procurement function may have that task, because they may have things they need to do to be able to facilitate that process. And so that's why at the department goal, you want to really evaluate, how can I support this strategic goal? And then after you've defined the how, then it's, okay, what are the individual tasks that would be assigned to my team to be able to move the ball down the field? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so how are we going to build these goals and tasks with the SMART methodology? Some of y'all may have heard of this before. It's been around for a while. A lot of times gets used in kind of a more HR space. I really like it because it's easy to remember, and it's a good baseline framework. And so just an overview of the SMART goal framework, if this is the first time you're hearing it. SMART is an acronym, so it starts with the S is specific goals. So goals should be clear and specific to provide direction and focus for the achievement. And so it's like another way I use it, doesn't work for the acronym, but it's outcomes. What do we want to see out of this? And that leads us to the M, the measurable outcomes. How do we measure our progress to ensure accountability and help track the success effectively? Now, measurable outcomes is often the hardest part of a SMART goal. And you may come up with a goal and then really struggle with outcomes, and that is totally and completely natural. If it's a transactional operation, a lot of times it's very easy to point to information in, information out, or number of transactions processed, or whatever, service level agreements. But a lot of times when we're talking about things like success, or like the fuzzier experience or sentiment, you can run into some difficulties in how exactly do we want to quantify that. And so that's definitely an area that as a leader defining these, that you want to think about for your group, of what does success look like and how do we measure it? And so getting a little bit out of that feeling side and actually drilling into how does this represent in some kind of analyzable format. And that's important to really be able to show for both your team and your stakeholders on being able to show the progress. And then achievable targets. So goals must be realistic and attainable to encourage motivation and prevent discouragement. This is always a little difficult to find the right balance. A lot of times you can either think you're going to get much farther along than you do. I'm perennially thinking things will take 2 weeks and they take 3 or 4. And there's also times that you think you're going to get through more than you will. But you also don't want the other side to happen on it's achievable targets, but also let's not sandbag the targets and say, I'm only going to get 3 of these done, but I really think I can get 5. But I'm only going to put 3 just so that way I can mark it as complete. So we want to kind of really take that realistic view, a little bit of a stretch goal, but not so much of a stretch goal that the team supporting it are like, we're just never going to get to this. And then relevant and time bound. So goals should align with the broader objectives, which since we're tying it to the strategic objectives, definitely have that tie-in there. But then the key piece is having those deadlines to ensure the timely completion. One of the things that I like to bring up, even though I hate meetings, is meetings generate action. Because whenever you see that meeting on your calendar in 4 hours or in the next day, you're like, oh yeah, I have to actually get to that. Versus if it's sitting in your email or it's sitting, on your to-do list, a lot of times it will just sit there and it always winds up on the back burner. And so having these goals be time-bound replicates that meeting effect on there is a deadline, even if it's an artificial deadline. But there is a deadline of, I have to go in, I have to update this. And there's a personal level of embarrassment of if this is the 3rd or 4th time that I've updated it and says, nope, haven't done anything, that can generate initiative from a person. So when we translate the strategic objectives into those SMART department goals, the first thing we want to do for each of your organizations is we want to break down those strategic objectives and divide them into the departmental goals so that way we can align those efforts with the overall strategy. And so when you're looking at those overall objectives, you go, for my department, here's my goals to support that. And they may be super clear, like I have to do X, Y, and Z because it's written in the top level goal. But some of them might be a little bit fuzzier. There might be some collaboration on how can I support, or if it's even necessary to have a goal related to that. Then after you've identified those departmental goals, making sure to build them within that SMART goal criteria framework. And be specifically focused around that measurability of it and that time-bound aspect. The other thing that's really great in Planner, which I'll show you, is you're able to assign to people. And if you would like, you can assign capacity as well on how long you think it should take. So if there are multiple departments pulling on that same person, you'll have visibility on if somebody has a really heavy workload that's due to this and can do some reallocation if necessary. And then finally, the focus and measurable contributions. They'll allow departments to really focus their effort and measure their contributions towards achieving these strategic objectives. So now as we step them down into the next level, we create those individual tasks. The key things on these individual tasks is really making them as clear as possible. And so one of the things I will say in this is as you start early in this journey, it can be difficult to make all tasks clear. I usually challenge to make it as clear as possible for as long as possible. But there are times that we don't know what we don't know. And leaning into that, and that's okay, that the tool allows you to continue to add tasks as they're identified throughout the period. And that's actually really helpful to be able to see that from a look back perspective of we originally thought X, but we wound up having to add Y and Z because they were new criteria or new things we discovered as we were going down the path. Totally normal. We're not going to have all the answers to the test at the very beginning. And then making sure those tasks are measurable as well. And so that way it allows progress to be tracked pretty effectively. So to use an example of that, one of the ways you can do that is, for example, if you have a task of getting an understanding how to track student attendance. That's a good task that's assigned to someone, but it lacks that measurability to track progress. And when we're talking about a tool, having someone being able to update, are they 0% done, 20% done, 50% done? What are the components of that task that is a success criteria? What makes it successful? And so that's where I often say, hey, add some bullets to it. Say, identify stakeholders, schedule a meeting, gather alignment, and then finalize next steps or finalize understanding or however you want to document that. That gives you 4 very clear steps and activities of success as part of that task to say, when Joe Bob gets assigned to this task, he now knows he's got these 4 things that have to be done. And that helps translate the vision of each of you as leaders into those task executors. And so that way they know they're bringing the right information and surfacing it back up. It also helps prevent, as we get into the process, when someone gets assigned a task, oftentimes what will happen, it'll be gain an understanding. And what will happen is someone will go talk to, Jim Bob will talk to Sally Sue, and then come back and say the task is done. And then that gets reported as a task is complete. And then after that task is complete, inevitably a document gets reviewed or it gets surfaced up and someone goes, well, this isn't right. And so then it has to go back to start and go, oh, we missed a stakeholder. And so that's where that specificity comes in on the task level to say, what is that success criteria? Like, how do you identify have you even identified the list? Like, what does it mean when we say get an understanding? And that can look different for each type of task, but you want to really try and give that playbook for them to be able to be successful with that, as well as accurately represent their current state of progress. And then finally, the last part is, again, just making sure that those tasks are aligning with your goals from a department perspective that are subsequently aligning with the overall goals of the organization. So I'll pause there for just a minute or so. Any questions? Does that make sense? I know I'm kind of throwing a lot at y'all.
Yeah. All good.
Perfect. All right. All right, so let's talk briefly about setting up and organizing plans in Microsoft Planner. So the first thing that we'll talk about is creating plans and buckets that are aligned with overall strategic goals. And so in Planner, you have these 2 really big concepts that kind of get redeployed over and over and over and over. So the first thing is creating these top level plans, these top level outcomes. Those will be created based on the strategic plan and will tie directly to them. I'll show you how that looks in just a little bit. And so that gives you your beginning plan. And then the next step is, how do we want to bucket our task organization? You can do it many different ways based on what works best for your organization. Oftentimes people think based on calendars. And so buckets can categorize those tasks by project phases, by quarter, by functional area, just kind of whatever way you want to kind of ingest what that information looks like. Since this is a calendar-based plan, so it's an annual plan, my suggestion is to do those buckets by quarter. So you can have visibility each quarter into what is the progress of the activities for that quarter. And then we get into, so task assignments, as I mentioned, each task assignment as it's built gets allocated to specific team members. And that it really ensures clarity in your responsibilities and ownership. The reason it's important to allocate a lot of those tasks to people is it gives you reportability on who has what tasks, but also visibility into where we run into delays. And inevitably, we're going to run into delays. That it lets you see those and go, okay, well, Jim Bob's getting delayed, but he's got buried under this new report requirement or whatever, and totally makes sense. But let's shift it so we can continue to make strategic progress, even though the tactical has slowed us down a bit. The other thing it provides for you is a measure of organizational resilience. So in the event that, God forbid, we have some turnover or role shifting in the organization, oftentimes that's where you'll see some of these tasks fall apart because Sally Sue had 3 tasks assigned to her, and maybe she left or retired, and then all of a sudden we're moving through the year and somebody goes, well, I can't get mine done because I'm still waiting on this thing, and come to find out that that thing was something Sally Sue was supposed to do. And so there's kind of a scramble to figure out who should be doing that now. But having those tasks assigned to that person lets you have quick visibility into who should be doing it and do we need to reallocate that. Deadline setting, making sure we've got clear deadlines established to promote that accountability, to create that feeling of prioritization. And then, as I mentioned, it generates this accountability around the tasks and the deadlines to ensure a steady progress towards the goal. And so that way we don't wind up the month before they're due, everybody scrambling to try to get it done. All right, so then comes to my next favorite level. It's utilizing labels, priorities, and progress tracking. So what you can do, especially at a department level, is you can categorize these tasks. And so you have everything, say, in a single quarter, and say you've got 10 tasks for that quarter. And depending how your department is organized, you may want to have visibility into different ways for those updates. And so you can create labels and assign labels to those tasks. So one of the ways, like I use it in my personal team, is those labels are to assign it to groups of people. And so I have a tech team, I have a business analyst team, I have an internal team. And so not only can I see what's happening and who is assigned, but generally which team is assigned. Because oftentimes I want to look at it at a little higher level and say, is this team running at the speed I expect it to be? Especially where you've got some separation between maybe a team leader that's really in the day-to-day versus yourself. And you just want to make sure that that overall team is staying on track. And if they start to run behind, maybe that team leader needs a little bit of coaching of, hey, I see this is running a little bit behind. What's your plan to catch it back up? And they're like, oh, yeah, we totally understand. We have a big meeting on Friday for it. That's where we're going to update everything. So just giving you that ability to have visualization from that perspective. The other thing I like to do with it is you can create task dependencies. So you can say, I can't start my task until this other task is done. And oftentimes I'll create labels around dependency and who is dependent on. So I know if I've got several tasks dependent on a single person or single group. So if we do start getting closer to that deadline and I haven't heard anything, I can call up that group and be like, hey, I don't want to put pressure on you, but I do have some tasks coming up from you. Do you have an expectation when you're going to get it to me so I can get my resources scheduled? Priority settings. So speaking of dependencies, oftentimes I'll have these with a higher level priority, just from a logistics perspective of execution. And so when we're looking at priority, being able to say, I know if I don't get this done, for example, Ron's team may not be able to take their next step. And so if we play this out, we've got a 12-month program. If I'm month 11 and a half and I go, oh yeah, I got to get this done and I get it done real quick, Ron's team may not have time to spin up and get it done, or it may be a huge fire drill and emergency. So I have a downstream impact. So a lot of times in those situations, I'll increase the priority. So that way it's the first thing in the quarter my team is looking at. So that way we minimize any of those downstream impacts. As part of that too, I will often also prioritize the areas I know the least about. And what I mean by that is oftentimes you'll have a task, you'll think you know how it should be executed, but there's some fuzziness. Maybe it's an area you haven't poked in. Maybe it's something about some discovery. And so prioritizing those early in the process, knowing and just leaning into this is probably going to be an area that I'll have a couple of conversations on, or I'll find some information, and it's going to generate additional tasks as part of that. And so just being able to prioritize that with your team so they know what they should be focusing on first, and that not all tasks are created equal necessarily. And then the third part is by utilizing these, you get real-time progress tracking. So through this platform, as people make updates, similar to your OneDrive, if you've done collaborative editing with OneDrive, it updates across all of the platforms simultaneously. Awesome. So finally, visualizing those linkages from your strategic objectives all the way to your task executions. So this was just really around that hierarchy connection. So the way it's going to work in Planner is you'll set the goal, you'll set your strategic goal, you'll set your department goal, and then we'll set our tasks underneath that. And whenever we do that, when you first create it, you'll create a task. And then when you create a second task, you'll tell it, assign this task to the thing before it. And when you do that, all of a sudden, your task above it is no longer going to be a task. And what it does at that point is, because it's made as a hierarchy, it pulls its status completion from the tasks that are under it. And so that saves you the effort of having to go, is this task done? Yes, and updating my numbers up top, right? So it's doing that for you already. So that mapping links those strategic objectives to all the departmental goals and the individual tasks. And so at any given time, as those tasks are changing down below, you have visibility into what is our progress being made to that top level objective. By also using that bucketing feature, we can see it each quarter, what kind of work we're in for, and also see at the end of each quarter, have we accomplished the execution of that work? And do we need to roll things over into the next quarter? What that really helps is prevents what I call the snowball effect. If you've ever seen the cartoons where the little tiny snowball turns into this massive thing running down the mountain, that's really what this transparent roadmap helps you mitigate and manage throughout. Sorry if y'all hear some, not hollering, but some chattiness in the background. My wife and mother-in-law are planning our baby shower, which is Sunday, so.
Oh, fun. Congratulations.
Thank you. I think the the baby shower may be the pain that I get subject to for the joy of my son, so I'll suffer through it. So as I mentioned, you can link those tasks for the traceability by using these labels. The labels will categorize the tasks to enhance that tracking, allow you to filter and view things in the way that's most effective for you. And then I love to add comments, and it gives you auditability. So that way you can go back whenever somebody's saying, hey, this task is delayed. And inevitably the question is, well, why is it delayed? If that person's inputting good comments in their tasks, it's maybe a month later, someone asks a question, they're not digging through emails or trying to find out. I love you can attach documents, so it's a very flexible tool. And so we can see where we struggled throughout or where we've been really successful throughout. And then ultimately what happens, as I mentioned, is as these tasks get filled out, it gives you visibility to ensure alignment and monitor progress at all levels. And so you can see that the task level, the department level, or the overall objective level. You can see some really cool charts. Through a credit report in here because it had really cool charts, but I promise it's not a credit report. But you'll have dashboards for monitoring. And then as we make adjustments to that strategy, we can make them at the task or goal level, and that will automatically feed into those reports. All right. So just in conclusion, combining our strategic planning framework with SMART goals helps us increase our focus and measurable progress. Leveraging our planner tools will enhance our task management for accountability and strategy execution. And having a tool like this dramatically improves our execution success through clearer goals and having that visibility of intra-year activities. All right, so let me stop sharing for 1 second, and I will pull up actual planner so y'all can see what all I've been talking about. All right. So I've got a copy here, of course. Give it a second to boot up. There we go. So what you're seeing here is I just made a quick test copy of Planner. I can do it from zero. I just wanted to go ahead and have some stuff pre-populated in here just so that way I can reiterate on some of the topics from before. So the first things I want to show you. So this is what's called the grid view. This is my personal favorite, but maybe that's because I'm an accountant or originally was an accountant. I love my Excel, so I like being able to see everything in these nice little rows. I also like the way it shows the stair steps in. So what you can see here is I have a goal, student success, that is made up of one task under it, enrollment and access. And then under enrollment and access, I've got subsequent areas and tasks. And so you can see how you can quickly get down to multiple levels, depending on what works best for the organization. Based on what I referenced earlier, generally the areas that I would have here is I would make this be the department. And then under the department, I would have the tasks. But if necessary, you can add this third tier in here to be able to have some separation between tasks and some visibility into how that works. So, as you can see here, in every goal, they all have the same data fields, every goal, every level, every task, and it just gets populated based on what's below. On each of the tasks, you've got a pretty rich field on what you can fill out. And so whenever you've broken out your departmental goals and you're doing the actual tasks, so I'll start at the bottom and then come up. The minimum you need is the title, the start, and the end date. What my suggestion is in bucket, in this one we have goal student success. I'll show you how to change that to Q1, Q2, Q3. Assign it to a bucket or a sprint. So conceptually, there's a thing called sprints, which are it's a leftover from developmental orientation called Scrum methodology, where we're going to sprint and work really hard on these things and then stop and take a breather and look around. So for time-based things, oftentimes you'll see it put in sprints. If you're using sprints, it always has this concept called a backlog. Backlog is we came up with this new thing that needs to be done. It hasn't been assigned yet. We talked about it in a meeting. Maybe we need to have more discussions, or maybe it's just something that's out there that we want to have visible. I mentioned success criteria. So that is, what are the things we expect to be done to say this is actually completed, that we want to communicate to the person we are assigning the task to. That is great to fit in this checklist area. And so that way, as the person completes it, it's very easy for them to just check it off. This then makes it very easy for them to scroll up on completion. As they check it off and they're doing it, they can complete it and say, I'm 50% done now because 1 out of 2 of my checklist is complete. So you've got nice visibility there from that. Effort. You can choose to use this. This can get complicated. So I don't want to overwhelm with capability. So if you do have a group that you want to make sure you're not overwhelming with effort, you don't want to make sure any one person has too much assigned to them in a quarter, you can put effort on each of these tasks, and it will let you see the hours that are expected to complete this task. And then you'll be able to see a report related to that to see how many hours are assigned to a person. Adding a dependency to the task. So you can go here and you can assign it a dependency to another task. One of the cool things it does is if I assign it as dependent to this unduplicated enrollment, when I unclick unduplicated enrollment, it's going to tell me it's delayed and that it's dependent. You can say it's finish to start, finish to finish, start to start. So what these mean, finish to start is unduplicated enrollment has to be finished before I can start this. Or finish to finish is unduplicated enrollment has to be done before I can say this is also done, because they both have to be done at the same time. Start to start, both of them have to start at the same time, although they can finish at different times. And start to finish, we may need the definition of unduplicated before we can cleanse, right? But the finalized definition may not be required. And so that's what that start to finish is. Delay type, you could say, it's immediately finished to start, or maybe it's a day or two, lags and leads. And what this does, it allows the system to see, can you even start this yet? And so it's not cluttering up reports with it. And being able to see, let me adjust this to, there we go. Change this one to the 24th. We do this. Duplicated is 1027. So you can see it's pretty pretty easy to go in here and make these adjustments. And you can see as I change this cleanse unduplicated enrollment, we had define unduplicated, and I'll do it again here. I moved it to the 27th. But when I go to do cleanse unduplicated, because it's dependent, if I move it to the 20th, it's going to move the other one as well. Of course, it's not doing it now. They wind up moving each other. Well, now it's under. So now after that, the attachment field is one of my favorite fields. So this is the one, if there is one thing you take from this, make your teammates and team members leverage this attachment field. I throw emails in there. I throw documents, Word documents. When a document is in here, it's in OneDrive. So you can add it from team files. You can add it as a URL. And so you have one location where all the information related to this task is. And so if we define unduplicated enrollment, we can put the document that we defined it in, so the Word document, and the email where everyone gave a thumbs up saying, yes, this is good. So when we go 6 months down the road, someone goes, I don't agree with that definition. We can pull it back up and go, here's the email. Here was everyone that was on it. We all agreed. Here's the definition. Yes, it all ties out. Just really facilitates that continuity of information process, especially if tasks get reassigned. So you're not digging through old emails going, I know we talked about that in a meeting. You can connect this to Stream if you do meeting recordings or Teams transcriptions. You can add this plan to your Teams channels. So that way, if you have a departmental Teams channels, if somebody's having a specific chat with a work group about this task, all that can be fed into here. So it's a wonderful collaboration tool in that way. And then the final part is we just connect it to our goal. And so let's go ahead and just add a new task like we're going to do this. And so what we'll do is we'll make this one like we're going to make it a departmental goal. So let's go ahead and name it departmental goal. Now we know for our departmental goal, we're not going to have specific tasks on that. We're going to have tasks under it. And so what we're going to do is go here and we're going to add a task 1. And so now you can see here, my task 1 is set up and it's at that same level as departmental goal. And so what I want to do is go over here and see how you can make it a subtask. So what this is going to do is for the one right above it, it's going to push it in and you're going to see this departmental goal is going to turn bold like these up here. So let me make this a subtask and voila. So now I have an actual task here. And so for my departmental goal, I can make multiple tasks. And it tries to be smart and follow the same formatting as what's above for you. Now say it was too smart on task 3. Let's say this was actually instead of task 3, let's say this is departmental goal 2. Well, how do I get this to go back over 1? Again, you'll hit your triple bullets, and instead of making a subtask, you'll hit this one below and just hit promote subtask. So that promotes it to the next level up. And now you see it's back at the same level and we can add tasks underneath it. Now what we'll do here is on this task. Again, I work a lot from the triple bullets. It's a little bit faster from my perspective, but here we can connect these tasks to goals. I'll go ahead and add it to my student success goal. And and then we'll go over here, and this is where we can fill out our overall task information. So we can go in here and assign it. I'm going to go ahead and assign it to Brandon. So I've got my resources in here. This will connect to your Active Directory. And let's say I want to add a label to it. Let me say I want to add it to, we'll call it our internal audit team, because that's Brandon. Hit enter. And so now I can see specifically, even though I've got one departmental goal, I'll be able to see based on specification teams who it's assigned to. And what I'll show you as well, let me pull this over real quick because I saw it just hit. Doggone it. I actually changed this to me. So you can see how easy it is to go in here and change people. And so what I'm waiting on is as people get assigned a task, they'll get an email about it saying, hey, you have a task assigned to you. It will also, if they are users of Planner in Teams, let's see. Just got to pull up the right planner. So if they're heavy users of Teams, there's this planner icon and they'll be able to see it right here, and they can see it's updated at the same time. So it's very, very collaborative oriented. And so it'll hit across multiple areas at the same time. Whenever it's delayed, they will get a notification, and they'll also get a notification a week ahead and a day ahead, if I recall correctly, on when the activity is due. Also, if they use Microsoft To Do, they'll be able to see a personal view of things that are due now and due later. So if they're using any of this kind of information, they'll be able to see assigned to me all these different assignments. And so in this task, this is where we'll do all of our specific, measurable, actionable, time-bound is all embedded here, right? So our task is do X, be specific. How are we going to measure it? We'll put it down in our checklist of how do we measure successful execution, with this. Not meet with B, meet with B. So now it's specific, it's measurable. These are actionable steps. And then are they reasonable? So that's kind of just a smell test of it. And now the key piece is let's make it time bound. So our start date, let's say we're going to start it today. And we think we've got a couple of meetings, compiling next steps and reviewing with somebody. Let's estimate let's get it by the end of the month. So now it's time bound. So now we have this specific timing assigned to it. So as we fill this information out, it can be a bit of a bear. It can take some time to do, especially if you're doing it right. But what this now does is, let's go to our handy dandy timeline view. Now we can see for each goal, overall, what's our time of execution on this goal? And then within that, we can see execution at each layer and be able to see what's happening when. And so it gives you great visibility on what's coming. And then as we get down to each level, you can see specifically for this department goal, I'm working on this from this window to this window. And then maybe we are going to have, we add Brandon to this one. And we'll add Brandon, and so we'll add a start date. Maybe that one's the 17th, and we'll call that, oh, maybe to the 1st. Let's make that the 11th. Oop. Just so that way we can see. And let's make this one an urgent priority. And now we can see when am I working on it versus when is Brandon working on it. So you can see and manage your team. This also comes in super helpful. A lot of times we'll do these plans at the beginning, and it's going to take 6 months, and someone goes, oh, I'm going to be out for 2 weeks, or vacations, or sick leave. And so being able to see, okay, they're going to be out for 2 weeks. What are the things that they're going to do for that 2 weeks that we need to move and adjust? And so that's great visibility this gives you. The other part is on charts. And so here we only have one goal identified, but you can see for each of your buckets for this goal, we have late in progress and not started tasks. And so we can see where we are. And here is if we're doing it by person and we're assigning hours, where we can see the effort per person. Over here in the top right, I'm working on several other tasks at that time. So having that visibility. So I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. This was a very quick overview, but just wanted to share what this looks like. Here's the board view. Many people like this view instead of the grid view because they can kind of drag and drop things. So I'll pause here. Do I have any questions?
None for me, Morgan. I'm probably going to need to have more than one training on this, but it looks like a lot of the project management stuff looks a lot like what we work on, setting up schedules for some of our other projects that we work on here at the campus for construction.
Yep. It'll be very similar to that, especially with kind of this Gantt chart view.
The Gantt chart is what I'm used to saying. Yep.
Yep.
What's the software? It's just, this is just a Microsoft.
This is Microsoft Planner.
So it's in our Microsoft tools already, Ron?
Ron sent an email just this afternoon. We
Oh,
need
okay.
licenses, right, Ron?
Yeah,
So we'll need to know.
Belinda
who's
sent me
gonna
some more
use it.
to add, but a lot of the people here have licenses already.
I use it to plan several events. I absolutely love this for kind of management.
Excellent.
Well, thank you, Morgan.
Thank you all. And since we have a quick minute, I'll show you a nifty thing. So depending on the license, Ron, I'm not trying to blow your IT budget, but I do want to show this cool capability that, you know, Microsoft's embedding kind of AI into everything. And so what it will do is generate reports and emails for you. So if we want to go let's go last month. So you can kind of natural language ask it to create a report, and it will create that information for you. So especially helpful whenever somebody's asking, hey, can you tell me like where we're at on this? You can have it quickly spin up a report for you. And it does, because it is an agentic AI, it does take a little bit longer than some of your other AI, like your quick ones. But I'll show you a draft I did previously.
Objective AI, would you call it?
Agentic, so agent.
Agentic, okay.
Yeah. So let's see if I can open this one. Yep. So this one, I asked it to create a email for me. And so it told me, hey, we've got some delays, critical tasks haven't been done. Here's the completion chart. And then it gives you the project timeline. So it gives you a very quick synopsis of everything. The more that's put into comments as people are executing it, the more that this has access to give you a summarized picture of what's happening. So just a nifty thing to help facilitate whenever you're getting questions. You're not having to spend 15, 20 minutes going through figuring out each task where it stands. You can use this to help generate it. Excellent. Well, we've got just about 3 minutes left. I heard we've Jennifer, I believe you said you've got a planner that you've been using it and love it. Is there any specific lessons learned that you've had on it, or ways that you like to structure it that are super helpful?
I am one of the people that likes the board view.
Mhm.
I really like it. I'll say the biggest problem I have with it is getting other people to. You could have the best laid out template and plan, but if somebody is not wanting to look at it or use it, they'll email you what they've done or their task instead of going into it and checking it off. So that part's something to harder. I also know that it can interact with OneNote, and I'm a big proponent of OneNote, and so the two of them together can do pretty amazing management.
Absolutely. And yes, that can be a difficulty of that change management exercise to get people to actually update within the tool. Similar to getting people to use a ticketing service for help desk. A lot of times there's an education component to it. You're never going to change every single person, is usually the way I put it. I'll often just ask people and kind of gently push them to, hey, would you mind updating this in Planner, please? And a lot of times it's just a reminding exercise, and then they'll happily go do it. Like I'll usually send them the link. And I see Ron dropped that in the chat. And you can copy this link to this task. And so if you do that, when they click it, it'll take them directly to that task to update it. So it's a quick way to kind of send back a, hey, really appreciate this update. Would you mind just dropping this in here? And then a lot of times I'll remind people like, yeah, I know you're used to emailing it, but if we do this, it really is helpful. It's a little bit of a trap, but it's also something that I'll bring up. I will often, if I have one of those people that are highly resistant to doing it, I'll often take their update and drop it in here. My reasoning for that is to be able to use it to create that report. The thing I caution you on is doing that too much, because then you become the easy button for them to update it in the system rather than them learning to do it themselves. So. Excellent. Everyone excited and gung ho about using it now?
I am.
I am. This is Belinda. I am. I'm looking forward to using it in Au Pair.
Awesome.
If
Well, as
it
always-
will replace SPOL, I'm in.
I'm
Well,
not
as
renewing
always-
the SPOL license, so you're in.
Hi.
As I know we're at the top of the hour, but as you guys get into it, if you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Knowing I have a baby coming, so if it's next month, it might take me a little bit to get to it, but I promise I'll respond to it. I love talking about this stuff, so y'all feel free. It's completely wide open for you to just shoot me an email if you have questions on, hey, I'm trying to do this, or do you want to get thoughts about how I could structure this? More than happy to have a conversation about that.
Okay. Well,
Thank you,
thanks a lot,
Morgan.
Morgan. We appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you.
Good job.
Take
Thank
care.
you so much.
Bye.